1.6 MPI 115 horsepower A16Xer, 1.8 MPI 140 horsepower A18Xer, 1.6 turbo 180 horsepower A16 LET. Atmospheric engines of 1.6 and 1.8 liters are twin brothers. In fact, these motors are unpretentious, and most of the hassles associated with them are due to natural aging. Once every 100,000 to 150,000 kilometers, you will need to pay attention to the membrane of the VKG system. It is built into the valve cover. We have already talked about the heat exchanger. Don't forget about the timing belt drive, about the modular ignition coil, which is also killed by worn spark plugs. Plus, with high mileage, you will have to replace the gasket, 24,405,911, of the oil pump. Yes, it is built into the front cover, so it is better to tie such a repair to replacing the timing belt. 1.4 turbo 120 horsepower A14 NEL, 1.4 turbo 140 horsepower A14 net. The 1.4 turbo engine under the hoods of Opel and the Astra J model, in particular, at first seemed extremely unreliable. But many such engines survived all the fears and survived without falling apart. As usual, changing the oil more often will solve a lot of problems. Unfortunately, when high mileage occurs, this does not prevent leaks from occurring on the crankshaft seals or on the phase shifter valves. Their O-rings need to be changed, 55,592,715. Naturally, leaks appear from under the valve cover, 55,561,429. To seal it, we change its gasket. And if the oil supply pipes to the turbine cartridge begin to sweat, then you need to change the gasket, 55,566,188, and rings, 55,567,827, on the oil return and supply pipes, respectively. But it is better to replace the supply pipes themselves, 55,592,600, and the oil drain pipes, 55,569,839. The 1.4 turbo engine also has a sophisticated crankcase ventilation system, in which simple diaphragm valves burst or simply wear out over time. This is the so-called mushroom valve in the intake manifold under the fitting into which the VKG tube is connected. There is also a valve in the tube itself, 55,568,267, and in the valve cover. When one of them bursts, errors will occur due to air leaks. Inexpensive and accessible solutions, i.e. the valves themselves and the non-original tube, have been on sale for a long time. A fairly common problem with 1.4 turbo engines is a malfunction of the adsorber valve, i.e. valve of the fuel vapor recovery system. A valve malfunction is indicated by error P0171, lean fuel mixture. The error occurs due to the fact that the valve becomes constantly open. The engine draws air through it from the gasoline vapor recovery system. At the same time, clicks of this valve will still be heard, and the tank plug will open with a bang due to the vacuum in it. A new original canister valve, 55,566,387, costs about $40. A working valve should not be blown out at all if the engine complains of a lean mixture, but nothing indicates a leak from the ventilation system. Look for air leakage into the intake elsewhere. For example, on very hardened intake manifold gaskets. The 1.4 turbo engine is equipped with a timing chain drive. The chain lasts about 150,000 kilometers. When stretched, it starts to rumble. It's better not to delay the replacement, because, in addition to the threat of overshoot, replacement will be more expensive due to the wear of its gears, the crankshaft and the gears of both phase shifters. 1.3 CDTI 95 horsepower A3 DTE. Let's talk about diesel engines, the youngest of which is a 1.3-liter engine with 95 horsepower. It was installed until October 2013. This is an Italian engine created by Fiat engineers. There are conflicting opinions about it, although this engine often runs more than 500,000 kilometers on commercial vehicles without problems. Yes, he is capable of this. Perhaps all that can bring it to overhaul is a broken circuit. And savings on maintenance, of course. 1.7 CDTI 110 horsepower A17 DTC, A17 DT. 1.7 CDTI 125 horsepower A17 DTR. 1.7 CDTI 130 horsepower A17 DTF, A17 DTS. A 1.7-liter turbo diesel was installed in almost all years of production of the Astra J. This engine was created by Isuzu. It has a timing belt drive and a cast iron cylinder block. This is a perfectly serviceable engine, with no obvious weak points. But some versions have dangerous swirl flaps. The fuel system can be from Bosch or Denso. 2.0 CDTI 160 horsepower A20 DTH, 2.0 BiTurbo CDTI 194 horsepower A20 DTR. The 2-liter turbo diesel in the Opel Astra J is rare, but in fact it was installed in all years of production. Only the BiTurbo version appeared later, in April 2013. This engine is also the brainchild of Fiat, a deeply modernized version of the 1.9 CDTI engine. Everything about this engine is not bad, but there are difficult places in it that rarely require attention, but threaten the life of the engine. For example, a cheap rubber band on the oil intake can lead to wear on the connecting rod journals. AF17 5-speed manual transmission, the 1.6 and 1.8 MPI engines, as well as the 1.3 CDTI turbo diesel, migrated from the Astra H, and with them the 5-speed. Mechanics F17. Yes, there are many successful examples when Astras with such a transmission ran more than 300,000 kilometers without breakdowns, but in general you can't relax with it. It's worth listening to both in your car and when choosing a car on the market. Are the bearings humming? Are there any shavings in the oil? Pay attention to the latter when changing the oil. M32 6-speed manual transmission. The M32 6-speed manual transmission is paired with 1.4 and 1.6 turbo engines. And such a transmission is also not a gift, its bearings are also rather weak. In general, it also needs close attention and care with oil changes. Otherwise it will buzz. F46 speed manual transmission, only the other 6 street has proven itself well. Manual transmission F40, which was placed together with a 2-liter turbo diesel and a rare 2-liter turbo engine, 6T30, 6T40, 6T45 6-speed automatic transmission. For gasoline engines, GM in collaboration with Ford, has developed its own automatic transmission, the 6T series. Unfortunately, this is not a very successful transmission. She performed especially poorly in the first years. Her problems were solved under warranty. Yes, it was improved point by point, but still the 6T automatic simply needs to change the ATF every 30,000 kilometers. A partial replacement is enough, and kicks and delays when switching on modes, impacts when changing gears are almost guaranteed to entail a major overhaul. In general, the automatic transmission of any petrol Astra J is not a gift. Aisin TF81SC 6-speed automatic transmission. The 2-liter diesel engine is equipped with a completely different transmission from Aisin. You can expect adequate reliability and resource from it. The Opel Astra J, which was produced in 2010 to 2014 with turbo engines and automatic transmissions of the 6T family, had the automatic transmission cooling oil lines replaced under warranty. These are 2 oil lines, 13,449,175, 13,449,171, directly from the automatic transmission and to a separate thermostat installed on the driver's side in front of its cooling radiator. They consist of aluminum tubes and rubber hoses. The leak formed just along the rolling. On these machines, all these pipes were changed during the recall campaign, but practice shows that on Astra J of any version, cooling pipes begin to leak after mileage of more than 150,000 kilometers. Moreover, ATF leakage can appear both at the connection of tubes with hoses and at the junction of the tubes with the thermostat, or directly at the inlet to the main radiator. It all depends on how the cooling is organized on a particular version of the Astra J. In general, the condition of the oil lines, ATF circulates through them, must be monitored and not driven with constant fogging. Opel Astra J brake calipers are notorious for rattling over bumps. First of all, the rear brake calipers begin to rattle. This all happens because the lubrication of the guide pins dries out and disappears, the guides begin to wear out, and the backlash and rattling volume increases. What are they doing about it? Many owners pull springs from the floating caliper to the stationary part of the caliper. Such springs are visible through the spokes of the alloy wheels. In a good way, you need to change the caliper repair kits 13,504,035, 13,504,035, 13,584,090, 13,418,686, and lubricate them with a suitable lubricant, 93,165,631. It has been noticed that the original guides from the repair kit are very soft and wear out quickly, especially without lubrication. The caliper rattle may return after 30,000 kilometers. Sometimes owners turn guides from familiar turners. Such fingers last much longer. By the way, if the calipers do not rattle, then your car is lucky they received improved brackets and guide boots. Astra J is equipped only with an electric steering rack, which does not pose any particular danger, i.e. serves reliably and for a long time. Even if it knocks, and not a single rack is insured against this, it can be restored. And its electronic part is extremely reliable. All Opel Astra J rear suspension is a torsion beam with a Watt mechanism. All this, in terms of smoothness and comfort, as well as controllability, reaches the level of a multi-link. Well, at least that's what the press releases promised. And Astra J fans don't seem to be complaining, but confirming the information. But in the rear suspension there are only 2 silent blocks. These are beam bushings. Even the original ones are sold separately for $50 each, $13,311,920. They have many substitutes. The hinge, $13,262,449. Of the Watt linkage is also subject to wear. It costs between $30 and $70. The Opel Astra J has McPherson struts at the front, but in the GTC version, any 3-door car, the steering knuckle is made in such a way that it rotates separately from the shock absorber strut and is generally moved closer to the central vertical plane of a rotation of the wheel. There are a lot of ball joints and other fingers, but this design is quite reliable. Accordingly, the Astra J GTC has its own lower control arm without a ball joint, and has its own shock absorbers and springs. The silent blocks, $13,219,090 and $20,835,938 of the lower arms are detailed separately, i.e. they can be purchased from the original and replaced. The rear one is a little expensive, about $160. Front dash $25. You can choose something based on substitutes without problems and much cheaper. Overall, the Astra J suspension is durable. The front stabilizer rods, $13,258,052, $13,219,141, which in the original may be plastic, are asked to be replaced once every 50,000 kilometers or even less often. They cost from $8 for non-original ones and up to $25 for branded ones. The rear wheel bearings, $13,577,406, and front bearings, $13,502,828, are inseparable from the hubs. The original ones are expensive, up to $350 a piece. There are plenty of substitutes starting at $50. The Opel Astra J was optionally equipped with Flex Ride adaptive shock absorbers. You probably won't see them on any car anymore. Adaptive shock absorbers do not have a long service life. They have no replacements, and no one needs the original. $13,357,179 and $13,382,708 at $1,000 apiece. The body of the Opel Astra J is fairly averagely protected from corrosion. In fact, all the troubles associated with rust start from the bottom. This is what needs to be examined carefully. On the outside, spots of peeling paint in areas exposed to sand often attract attention. These are the sills and edges, even the very corners of the front fenders and rear wheel arches along the joints with the bumpers. Also today, paint on the lower edges of doors often swells. Pay attention to the layer of sealant along the folding of the door panel. The same applies to the lower inner edge of the rear trunk, doors of hatchbacks and station wagons, and the trunk lid of a sedan. But the body fittings, locks, door hinges and stops, door seals, door handles, trunk lock buttons serve mostly without problems or breakdowns. The only thing is that the servo drive for the gas tank flap lock may fail. Either the flap will not open or its latch will not work. This known problem is due to the fact that the carbon brushes in the servo motor are destroyed. No problem, a commutator with new brushes can be bought in China. True, you will have to wait for delivery. It's probably better to update the manifold in advance. While the hatch opens without problems, the headlights of the Opel Astra J also usually work without problems. Cloudy lampshades are a sign of high highway mileage. This car has optional adaptive AFL headlights. In this system, expensive body position sensors, $12,845,300 and $13,362,768, $100 and $170 today, fail due to moisture, and they have no replacements. Jammed adaptive headlight lenses can be repaired by disassembling the headlight housings. The original windshield of the Astra J is rather weak. It cracks easily and is even scratched by pebbles. Opel engineers and designers clearly wanted the Astra J's interior to be more premium than its competitors. By the way, the interior is subjectively cramped, and objectively too. The boring Golf of the same era has both a larger interior and a more spacious trunk. The interior finishing materials of the Astra J are quite good and stand the test of time well. Painted and chrome-plated decorative elements retain their original appearance for a long time. Scratches on them, especially on horizontal plastic surfaces, only reflect the care of the owner. The fan motor, steering cable, and multimedia system last a long time and are not known for system problems. The experience of many Opel Astra J owners suggests that whatever the engine is under its hood, everything related to the cooling system usually deserves attention and repairs. For example, a tube connected from the throttle valve to the thermostat will one day leak. Naturally, we should expect leaks to appear along the gaskets: 25,189,205, 55,565,619, thermostat, 55,587,349, pump, 55,595,610, 24,405,895, flanges and T's, fittings connecting to the radiator, and thermostat housing, 55,564,890, 55,565,336. On turbocharged engines, not only the oil lines are connected to the turbine cartridge, but also pipes for supplying antifreeze. They should also be monitored periodically, because they are covered on top, together with the turbine, with a thermal shield. Again, with age, the expansion tank, 13,256,823 of the cooling system may crack, or due to a faulty coolant level sensor, 13,393,366, the low coolant level message will constantly illuminate. By the way, the expansion tank on all Astra Js is the same, and the remaining elements of the cooling system, of course, are different. As a rule, gasoline engines are most likely to leak. Roughly speaking, after 5 years of operation, a lot will have to be updated. It's not expensive and not too troublesome. We'll tell you separately about the cooling system lines for automatic transmissions. Gasoline engines, both naturally aspirated and turbocharged, also have rather hot thermostats, with an opening temperature of 105 degrees Celsius. There is nothing wrong with this, but the main cooling radiator must be absolutely clean and the fan must be in working order. And you shouldn't delay changing the oil beyond 10,000 kilometers or 7,500 kilometers for turbo engines. Another option is to install colder thermostats or reflash them through the ECU. Yes, the so-called reflashing of the thermostat to a lower opening temperature is possible, because they are manageable. And cooler thermostats are offered by non-original manufacturers, i.e. it is not necessary to look for a suitable cold thermostat from the same engine, but from a different Opel model. A malfunction of the thermostat is indicated by the message service time is approaching appearing on the display. Maintenance and a constantly running main fan. Let's add that you can flash the onboard computer so that on its display you can see the real coolant temperature, ATF temperature in the automatic transmission, and battery voltage. It is worth combining the story about the heat exchangers of naturally aspirated engines 1.6 and 1.8 and turbocharged 1.4. Of course, the heat exchangers themselves are different. For naturally aspirated engines, it is an aluminum radiator screwed to the cylinder block, to which the oil filter housing is attached. In the 1.4 turbo, the heat exchanger is screwed to the oil filter cup. In a turbo engine, due to the aging of the gaskets, 55,568,536, 55,568,539, 55,565,385, as a rule, oil begins to leak out. In naturally aspirated engines, as well as in the 1.6 turbo created on their basis, due to the hardening of the gaskets, 55,353,321, 55,353,319, 25,199,750. Oil and antifreeze can mix, i.e. get into neighboring contours. In order not to later wash the entire cooling system or not be surprised by the antifreeze in the sump, it is worth changing these gaskets on engines 1.6 and 1.8, preventably once every 100,000 kilometers. When replacing, you need to carefully inspect the heat exchanger to see if it is deformed, although this cannot be determined by eye. And one more addition, the emulsion in the expansion tank of any Astra J gasoline engines is most often due to the heat exchanger gaskets. But if the antifreeze level in the 1.4 turbo engine begins to decrease, and an emulsion appears on the oil filler plug and the oil level in the sump begins to rise, then this means replacing the gasket, 55,562,793, of the entire front engine cover. There is a pump on the front of the engine cover, and behind it there is an antifreeze channel. It is precisely in this place, sealed by one common gasket, that a leak appears.